Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the final game drive of my work cycle. That is not important to you, and it's not relevant to you, but to me, well, of course it is. It has been a 14-week stint. There is a zebra over there, and you are on a live sunset safari with Wild Earth in the northeastern corner of beautiful South Africa. We're on the western fringes of the Kruger National Park on a little reserve called Djuma. The west of us is Arathusa, where we are going to go and check what was found this morning. My name is James Hendry, and on camera we have Tebs today. That's Tebs' thumb right there. And then on the other vehicle is Jamie Patterson, and she's being filmed by the diminutive but equally powerful Willem Dorenbrach. And in the final control we have Kirsty on the vocals, Jerry on the keys. Just a lovely herd of impala here. And it's a very cool day. It's merciful after yesterday. It's a beautiful, pleasant 26 degrees centigrade or 78 degrees Fahrenheit. So a lovely temperature. There is a bit of a breeze blowing, but that's okay. And you can see the impala having a bit of a snooze. And they're, of course, having to eat a lot in the way of browse. They would be grazing if they could, but because there's not much grass, as you can see, they're doing mostly browsing. And the browsers are going to be affected by this drought, I suspect, far less than the grazers are going to be initially. Then, of course, it'll all even out. Now, apparently there is some rain predicted, and that is for tomorrow. Apparently large thunderstorms predicted. Of course, like I've said before, the predictions of the meteorological societies out here, or possibly in anywhere in the world, tend to be works of fiction greater than those of J.K. Rowling. So we won't hold our breath for the rain tomorrow. Anyway, it's a lovely day. I'm most excited for this drive because the welding torch of the sun is being blotted out by a thick bank of very pleasant clouds that you can see here. I know it may seem very bizarre to many of you throughout the world that I should be pleased to see a thick bank of clouds, especially perhaps to viewers in the United Kingdom. Well, it is just a bit of a relief after the heat yesterday. So welcome to it. Please talk to us. You are on a live safari in case you've stumbled across this website by mistake and wondering what's going on. This chap waffling at you from the front of a Land Rover in the middle of the wilderness. Hashtag Safari Live if you want to talk to us on Twitter, or questions at WildEarth.TV if you'd like to address us on the email. And we do encourage it. Please remember that there are no stupid questions. We'd love to talk to you about anything you like. Well, I mean, within reason. About the South Africa, about the part of South Africa we're in, about any of the animals that we see, and perhaps about the concept of live safari. And, I mean, we've had some interesting discussions recently from people who are traveling to South Africa, and they've asked some very pertinent questions, and potential travelers, of course. There are a couple of misnomers about Africa and South Africa, and we'd like to clear those up. Right, without further ado, let us press on. Oh, and there's some zebra, of course. Let's just have a quick look at them. Looks like a stallion. I don't know. The one in the front is definitely a stallion. I'm not sure about that one there. Might be a young stallion or his lady. I can't see. But the one in front is definitely much larger. He's a good-sized stallion. One behind keeps stopping behind a bush, so I cannot tell, but probably a mare. Right, the first of his harem. There she is. Now, the landscape that you're seeing at the moment is very much a landscape that we'd sort of more normally see around, say, September or October, before the rains come. The leaves have got their, at least the trees have got their leaves on them, and the grass has yet to grow. And that's, you know, generally what happens in September, October, while we're waiting for the rain to come and the grass to grow. So for us, for the bush to look like this at this time of year is very unusual and is indicative, of course, of the fact that we've had almost no rain at all. Righty-ho then, on we go. Oops. We're going to cross Treehouse Dam, which has a little bit of water flowing underneath it that the elephants have managed to access through a large hole there. And then we're going to pass over to the west and see what we can find there. There you can see that hole that the elephants have dug. And it's because there is underground water flowing, and I'm pretty sure that they can feel that through their very sensitive feet. So that's the last remaining water in this particular area. And just remember, those of you who are wondering about that pan in front of the Djuma Dam Cam, I know that Jamie did mention it yesterday, but just to reiterate if you weren't perhaps watching, they are not pumping it because it's cracked. The bottom of it is cracked. It's cracked because of the hippo and because of the buffalo that have been using it so extensively. They cannot repair it while the hippo is there, so they're going to have to wait for it to dry out. Hopefully the hippo will move on to fairer climes and we can then get at that pan. But at the moment, any water that goes into the pan is just disappearing down into the dam, and that's obviously just a big waste. There's a tremendous water strain out here, so we don't want to waste any water that there is. Right, let's go across to Jamie, see what she's doing. She's in the northern side of the reserve looking for tracks of Tingana, the big male leopard, and we'll carry on west. See you shortly.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and what a wonderful contrasting start to our sunset safari compared to yesterday. It is so much nicer and cooler. The weather is no longer dry. It carries this hint of moisture that maybe, just maybe, we will actually get some rain at some point soon. I'm really hoping so. The weather reports seem to suggest we might, possibly not today, but maybe tomorrow. We do have the wildebeest back. He drove up today from Pretoria and encountered plenty of mist and rain on the mountains. So I'm hoping that that might mean we get lucky and it comes across our way. We do live in hope. So this morning, for those of you who missed the sunrise drive, I had reports towards the end of the drive that Tingana's tracks had crossed from Hoffman's into Goyatela, so into Djuma, where we are at the moment. I went and had a look all along Gowrie Main. I couldn't see them, but that's not in itself, it doesn't necessarily mean that they weren't there. The light is very tricky for tracking leopards in particular, and that road is also a very popular road. It's a main access road, so people drive up and down it all the time, and they might have driven over his tracks. So what I've done is I've gone all the way north and I'm working my way back down south along Zoe's road, try and figure out if maybe he popped out somewhere here. Maybe some of the less used roads might have evidence of his presence. So from where we had him yesterday around the Arathusa Dam, apparently he wandered onto the dam wall at some point last night before moving south into Hoffman's and then back up north. And the question becomes, where has he gone from there? If he is on a territorial marking patrol, there's a good chance he's going to follow fairly set routes. We know roughly now which paths Tingana walks. Roughly. It is rough guessing, but we have a better idea than most. And he usually either comes all the way up this boundary towards Powerlines Road, or he goes towards the Mulwati drainage and works his way up and around from there. And he doesn't usually work his way too much further north towards Buffelshoek area. And we've got a good chance that he's somewhere around here still. The only thing is that in this cool weather, he's going to have been moving most of the day, or there's a chance he was moving most of the day. But he should have left footprints somewhere for us to follow. Interestingly, it seems as though Simbabili was always part of Tingana's territory, but it seems as though the Anderson male, from what I understand from the other guides who traverse around those areas, looks as though the Anderson size of the Anderson male, I think he's put quite a bit of pressure on Tingana to move further and further east, which in turn, from what we understand, is putting pressure on Mvula as well, and pushing him further away from his natural sort of central home range. Chatting a bit about Tingana. He was seen not too long ago chasing wildebeest calves around, and I believe that James has found that particular herd as well.
So a great counterpart, of course, to the zebras that we've seen are the wildebeest, and they're seen migrating in vast numbers across the plains of East Africa. And here, well, not so much migrating, but they're sometimes found together, and the reason they are found together quite often is that they eat different lengths of grass. So the wildies eat closer to the ground than the zebras do. So if you're running through a long grass plain and you're a wildebeest, it makes sense to run behind some zebra, which will obviously clear a path for you to eat. Now, the other thing we have here are the little ones, which are the ones that you can see there next to the termite mound. Our particular herd, the Djuma herd, I'm not sure if this is the Djuma herd or not. They're very difficult to keep a track on. But we had 10 babies. I see 7 here at least. And I'm going to sneak a little bit forward, see if we can't see a few more. And quite miraculously, of those 10, I think they're all here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've got 9 at least. There's a big pile of them in the middle there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, sorry. There are 10 here. There are definitely 10. So they're all still here, which is amazing. Because normally, of course, when the lions come through, the wildebeest are just born and they get knocked off, and about 80% of them will not see their first birthday. But because the lions have been scarce, because they've been up on Buffelshoek largely, eating buffalo on a daily basis, the wildebeest have remained mercifully unmolested. You know, you can just see the one in terms of exactly that one, as its horns are starting to come up. So all the little horns are starting to come up, and the little wildebeest are going to start to change colour now from that beautiful sort of pale chestnut to the dark charcoal of the adults fairly soon. If they could just get through another month, another 4 weeks or so, they're going to be pretty safe, I think. It would be marvellous. Very beautiful. Highly underrated, much maligned, of course, because they do look slightly gormless. I suppose they do behave in a slightly gormless fashion as well. And this morning, of course, Jamie was watching some with wigs of straw on their heads, which is particularly ridiculous. And I recall a friend of mine telling me a story of a wildebeest once that saw a lion, a male lion, was just lying under a bush, not really hidden. The wildebeest saw him and started alarm calling, so he and looking at the lion, then started sort of trotting off, all the while looking at the lion, and probably ran into a tree and knocked itself silly. Fell down on the floor, at which point the lion walked up, strolled over and ate it. So I suppose the gormlessness to which they are, for which they are renowned is perhaps more well-founded than I've suggested. It's a lovely herd. Wonderful to see a herd almost double in size. Of course, these little ones will struggle as the drought goes on. The milk that their mothers are producing will start to become less nutrient-rich. Hello, Roy. You want to know what the most prevalent types of trees in Djuma are, and you say it's a strange question. Roy, I see not why you feel it is a strange question at all. I think it's a very valid and very good question. Roy, this kind of bush that we're in now is known as broad-leafed Combretum woodland, and the most common tree is a red bush willow, and a red bush willow is one of these trees here, I'll get you to a bigger one here. Already getting autumnal colours, which is just bizarre this time of the year. That's a red bush willow there. And that's the most common tree that we get here, and they're followed closely probably by the large fruited and variable bush willows. So different kind of bush willow trees. There's a large fruited there. So that's a large fruited bush willow. So those that kind of dominate most of the area here. And then on the ridge crest areas in the Crumbeatum woodland, you get these enormous, beautiful marula trees. Very famous tree, the marula, renowned, made famous by the liqueur Amarula cream, which contains about 1 part per 5 million of actual marula in the cream. But the at least it's made the the tree famous. And then, Roy, in other parts of the Sabi Sands, where we are now, well, most of the soil here is granitic, and on the granite soils, that's the kind of dominant vegetation that we find. And then if you go to the south, or some parts of the northern end of Buffelshoek, or eastern ends of Buffelshoek, you find gabbros coming in, and gabbro is a different kind of geology, which produces obviously a different kind of soil, which in turn produces a slightly different kind of vegetation. And mostly there you get knobthorns dominating. We call it knobthorn thermida or knobthorn redgrass savanna. So those are the kind of vegetation types we get here. Not a strange question at all, Roy. Very valid. And of course, without an understanding of A, the geology, and then the soil, and then the vegetation, you really can't truly understand why the mammals, which everybody likes to see, occur here, and what will make them healthy and what will make them not healthy. Thank you, Roy. I haven't managed to get an update yet from Arathusa, so that's where we're heading now. We're heading west. You can see lovely views. We crest this ridge and down. Lovely view out over the mountains. You can't see the mountains, but you can see beautiful grey clouds gathering there. Hello, Jenny in Pittsburgh. You want to know how I managed to adapt to the cacophony of the city, having lived in the bush for 14 weeks. Jenny, thankfully I grew up in the city, so it's not that much of a shock. I'm not going to be in the city for long. I'm going to be largely down in a sleepy little seaside village in the Eastern Cape of South Africa, so there won't be too much adaptation that has to take place, thankfully. It's quite nice to go to a city, you know, after a while, when you've been in the bush for this length of time. It's nice to be able to, I don't know, see some friends, maybe go and have a meal out. That's quite nice. But it does, it loses its appeal after about 4 days, I suppose. There's a little giraffe. Young bull giraffe. Tib, say when? Yeah? There's a little giraffe. Now he's south of us. Looks like a young bull. He's on his own. He's maybe just been excluded from his mother's little group. I'll roll forward. Not in jigger, I won't. Come on, Jigger, we're on a 40-degree angle here. There we go.
A bit more.
Well done. There we go. You can see he's very young because he's still got those tufts on the top of his horns. Shame he looks a bit lonely on his own. Maybe I saw the swishing of another one's tail through where that one's going. We'll just try and roll forward again. There it goes. Now that scene there, I mean, you can see the giraffe. You can also see the color of the leaves. That looks like, I mean, I said it looked like September, October. It actually doesn't. The top tree level looks like May. They're already going yellow, the leaves. They should be deep green with far thicker foliage than they've got now. Apparently, Jamie has beaten me. She's got 3 giraffe. Let's head across there.
I'm not sure I beat him, but I found more giraffe than he did. Trying to get us a nice view of them. Interestingly, it's the 3 of them that we saw on that bushwalk a couple of days ago, and then on quarantine. And I think it's the same 3. I would hazard a guess and say it's really likely. If I could get a proper look at that male, I might be able to confirm it for you. It's definitely the female and the calf. That is almost certain. We've seen this calf fairly regularly. It's very young. Hello, little one. And I mentioned at the time that I thought that this male was courting the female. I'm quite surprised. I wouldn't have expected her to come into estrus that quickly after having with such a young calf. And I would say this little one is only maybe about 3 months old at a guess, particularly if it's the one that we've seen suckling in the past, when a couple of months ago around Aubrey's Road. I think that calf's about 3 months old. I'm surprised that the female is in estrus again, or coming into estrus again so quickly. Of course, he might just be enjoying their company. She doesn't seem to be terribly interested, but his behavior suggests a sort of a courtship. He seems to never really let her out of his sight. He's slightly out of view at the moment. I think if I got a clear view of his side, I'd be able to confirm that it's the same male. I just need him to cooperate a little bit. Here we go, he might... no, he's going to be difficult. And if you hear the steady rumbling in the background, that is the water pump hard at work, bringing us the precious water from underground. And that's the sound that you're hearing. Here we go, the male's made an appearance. I'm pretty sure that is him. Those of you who are dedicated, if you want to have a look at your screenshots from the walk that we did, you might be able to tell, but I'm fairly certain that's him. And watch how he follows now. He's going to follow that female, I think. Or not, or he's just going to stand there. Yes, that's definitely him. Looking at those spot patterns, that is definitely him. That's an interesting example of, or an interesting example of giraffe behavior. There he goes after the female. And it must be quite a stressful time for the calf, because he's going to be possessive even to the point of putting himself between her calf and her. He's a nice big mature bull. He's quite dark in color, and you can see that height difference really nicely with the 2 of them standing like that. You can also see the difference in terms of males and females, in terms of ossicone structure. So for those of you who've asked about it, you can see the tufts on the female's head to the left, and she very obligingly wanders forward. You can see how thin her ossicones are, and you can see the height difference there. He's not helping matters. And there you can see on his head as he disappears the thickness of the ossicones and the bald patches on the top. Nice to have an example standing next to each other. And he just won't leave her alone. Now, a certain reluctance within a courtship ritual of many animals is very common. And the reason behind that is the female starts to give off the scents and the pheromones that she's going to come into estrus, but she goes through quite a long period where she will reject the male, where she's not quite ready to mate. And the reason behind that is so that she can ensure that she's getting the best possible suitor to mate with her, so she's getting the best possible genetics. He's definitely courting her. Whether or not he's going to have any luck, I'm not too sure. I have to confess, I don't know. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of extra research as to when exactly a female giraffe will come straight back into estrus, or whether or she'll come straight back into estrus after having a baby. I would have thought it lasts at least 6 months before she's ready. I would have thought her body needs that time to recover, especially if she's lactating to feed a calf. I don't know though, I'm really not sure. It's fascinating. I'm not sure if any of you guys know anything more about how often giraffe go into estrus. Gerda, you were right. We had that shot there that Bjorn was showing us earlier, and even now with this calf peering through the trees at them, the spots do almost look like leaves, and you can see how incredibly effective that is as a way of blending into your background, which is what giraffe do. Surprisingly effective for a creature that is as enormous as a giraffe is. Your baby's staying quite separated from mom. That's fairly common. Giraffe do that. Yummy. Oh, silver cluster leaf. Brave little baby. And Finn, all of that white, and unfortunately we don't have a good view to show you of the male, but you're talking about all the white around the face of the male. And you were wondering if that indicates that it is an older giraffe. Finn, yes, that and the dark color of that particular male. I wouldn't say he's old, I say he's in his prime actually. He's a nice big solid male. And that dark color comes with age, particularly in males, although there is a genetic aspect to it. What I'm going to try and do, because we've had a nice view of them, is I'm going to try and roll forward so that we can have another look at him. Giraffe are also particularly prone to skin conditions, so they get balding patches fairly easily. A lot of the time it's it's a form of the herpes virus actually that they get, which causes the polyps around the skin. But it's very common to see giraffe with balding patches. Let me roll forward. Oh, there he goes. Oh, thank you, buddy. And I think also the patches look whiter because he is so dark. It contrasts really clearly. But he definitely is a mature bull. Just looking at the size and the thickness of his ossicones when he's being obliging, as well as that dark color. And as I said, giraffe age, and they get darker as they age, but there's also a genetic factor to that. And I've noticed with males, it's much more apparent than it is with females. You don't really see dark female giraffe all that often. And at this age, apparently, they start to secrete a very smelly, so I'm talking about the male now, they start to secrete a very smelly substance that is apparently incredibly attractive to the females. Go forward a bit with it. I wonder if they'll let us come around the corner. I don't want to scare the car. They were very, very comfortable with us on foot. David, I honestly don't know exactly how many giraffe are in the entire Kruger area. I meant to should look that up actually. I've been asked that before and I completely forgot. I'd be curious to know. Please stick around, Arathusa. Are you going to stay there? I'll switch off. There we go. Being very obliging. Thank you. David, I'm not too sure. In terms of what's happening with their population numbers, I would say that they're probably fairly much or sort of have reached their standard, what's known as the carrying capacity of the area. So they've been giraffe in this area for a long time and their population has probably bottomed out, or not bottomed out, sorry, stabilized at a certain level. Here he goes again. He's definitely courting her. Here he goes, following behind her with a very eager, fascinating. Totally fascinating. I'm going to have to do some more research into giraffe reproduction strategies. They're disappearing off into the thick blocks, so let's pop across to... I was going to say we're going to pop across to James, but I don't think so. I've changed my mind. I'm going to keep you here longer. Get another view of this gorgeous little car while we have the opportunity. Hello, baby. Okay, it's all right, little one. Don't stress. Don't panic. Nice to see them get more and more habituated to the presence of vehicles. At the moment, the giraffe is currently stripping away at the weeping wattle. There, look at, you can see that size difference, it's tremendous. And the difference in feeding heights. You can really get a solid idea of exactly how much bigger males are than females. Because she's not a small female, she's an average sized female. And you can see the clear difference in color. And he's actually got some interesting spot patterns himself, little star-shaped patches around his bottom. And that's why I said I'd be able to identify him easily, because I remember seeing that the other day. You can see what kind of a role genetics plays in the different giraffe patterns. Would be so obliging, we'd be able to show Eric that what he's read is actually true. So Eric's read that a giraffe's tongue can reach its ear. Absolutely. Their tongue extends out about 1/2 meter or so, or can extend out 1/2 meter or so. That's about 1.5 feet. That is a tremendously long tongue and could easily reach back to touch their ears. I've yet to see a giraffe actually do that, if I'm completely honest, Eric. But you never know. You might get lucky. Maybe there's an itch around the ear or something like that. And that not only is that tongue incredibly long, it is very, what's the word? I want to say flexible, but that's not what I mean. Oh, goodness. Pardon?
Versatile.
Versatile. Thank you very much, Liam. Versatile. Thank you. And capable of wrapping around the leaves to strip them. It's also black in color, or very dark blue in color. And that's not because it's not supplied with blood, it's because it's oh my goodness, what is wrong with me today? What is wrong with my brain? It is infused, I suppose, let's go with that, with melanin, the pigment, that dark colored pigment that causes freckles in the skin of people. And that pigment is actually very, very tough. So it's reinforced, which is what allows giraffe to wrap their tongues around thorny trees, completely impervious to the wrath of the tree itself. Yeah, oxpecker. was not welcome. We've seen this little calf, and Rosie's been doing a bit of research on giraffe, and you're saying that the average the gestation period of a giraffe is around 15 months. It's up to 16 months in certain cases, and you're wondering where and how they give birth. So I'll start by saying they don't have a set breeding season, so giraffe will give birth year-round and come into estrus year-round. That being said, there's always, with every animal out here, those without a set breeding season, they still have a peak birthing time around this time of year, because it makes sense. There's rain, there's more food, particularly with a 15-month gestation period. The female can time the estrus cycle for the sort of the start of the rainy season and have her baby towards the end of the next rainy season, if the rain ever actually happens. In terms of where they give birth, somewhere private, possibly somewhere fairly densely vegetated, and I would hazard a guess and take that further and say that most common birthing times would be around the morning, because it's similar to the wildebeest and the impala. That gives that little baby just a slight increase in its chances of survival. And they'll give birth anywhere. I mean, I say that they'll go to thick and dense vegetated areas, but that's not necessarily always the case. Our giraffe are currently hiding, but luckily we've got our calf in view. Hello, baby. So as I said, I'm guessing at the age of this calf, putting it roughly at 3 months, maybe a little bit older. So if giraffe gestate for 15 months and then come back into estrus 3 months later, that means they essentially breed or are pregnant. I'm surprised. Let me just put it that way. I'm surprised by the behavior of the male. And he's really solidly courting her. It's not like a once-off occurrence. Maybe he got a little bit confused. I mean, he really is. He's spending a lot of time with her, and he's constantly with her. And that's been now, when did we do that walk? It was at least 5 days ago. Looking at us from behind the weeping wattle. I'm hoping to get a nice view of that tongue for Eric. Ooh, Lynn, you're asking me another question that's a little bit rusty. Lynn would like to know how many teeth a giraffe have. I don't think that sentence made grammatical sense. Yeah, how many teeth does a giraffe have? Lynn, if you bear with me one moment, I'll be able to tell you, but I have to confess, I have to look it up. Luckily, I have my full library. I'm hoping there might be a picture of it, but apparently it's somewhere around 32. So it's 32 teeth. I was hoping we might have a jaw structure picture that I could show you, but I can't find anything. So there you go. I did not know that off the top of my head. I should have. I did once upon a time. So 32, same number as us. And obviously the most important for them are the molars. She was giving us a nice demonstration there of her tongue, but he, as usual, although she doesn't seem to, she came round to his side. She came to him. So she doesn't seem too put off by his presence. Usually with large animals, there's a bit of a gap between their breeding times. There you can see the amazing skull structure. Giraffe are one of those weird creatures that the longer you look at them, the weirder they start to look. There, the ossicones and the bald patches on the top, and then those stunning long eyelashes. There we go. Demonstration, Eric. Might not be its tongue touching his ear, but he certainly managed to clean his nostrils with them, or with it. But the longer you look at giraffe, the weirder they start to look, in my experience, personally. And Michael, you were saying you know that every animal can swim, but you can't imagine a giraffe swimming. I've never seen it happen. I would love to. Particularly, I agree with you. I think it would look very strange. Look at those boots. Jeepers, he's beautiful. Those spots are fascinating. After his lady friend again. I think that giraffe would struggle to swim well, or for any kind of extended period. But I suppose the water would make them buoyant. I think it would be incredibly fascinating to watch. Their natural head position is this upright position. So they're not having to contract any muscles to hold their neck up or their head up like this. It's all controlled by a very powerful tendon. I will say that it's very common for giraffe, no, not very common. It is fairly common to find giraffe that have drowned in water holes. The reason behind that, though, is not because they can't swim. It's because they drink with their heads down for slightly too long. And because their blood and heart system and blood vessel systems are so well adapted to having their head upwards that it doesn't cope terribly well with their heads below the level of their heart. And what the end result of that is when they keep their head down, see, for too long, they do pass out. Now, we saw the different feeding heights of the two giraffe. The only other animal they compete with in terms of how high they can feed is, of course, the elephant. And actually, in terms of feeding height, elephants can feed. They have a slightly higher recorded feeding height in terms of records. And Pat, you were wondering whether they eat the same leaves. Yes, they do. Oh, sorry, Pam. It was not Pat, it was Pam. Pam, you asked if they eat the same leaves. Yes, Pam, they do. Particularly because certain types of trees have better nutrition levels at different times of year. So around October, the knobthorns are getting their brand new leaves at the top of the trees, and the giraffe and the elephants, oh, he's going to try and mount. Oh, we thought about it. Very briefly. Oops, sorry, let me take my foot off the brake. That was not Vian, that was me. Hello, Gertie. Coming to have a look at us. Or is he just irritating you? Interestingly, sitting here, I can smell something. I'm not sure if it's her or if it's him. But from where they've been standing, oh dear. Just an update for you all. Poor old Mr. Henry, on his final drive before he goes on leave, has a flat tire. So he is currently busy with changing that out. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but it's a shame. Poor guy. I think it's time for him to have a holiday. He has worked like an absolute Trojan recently. So I'm not laughing at him. I'm just having a quiet chuckle at the laws of Murphy. I know that feeling very, very well. So James will be busy changing his tire. I wonder if that tail's going to get stuck in the... I was wondering if maybe we would be able to grab some hairs after the giraffe have left. I might go back and investigate that tree a bit later, obviously not now, so that I could show you what giraffe hair looks like, although it didn't get as tangled as I thought it was going to get. Monique, they really are. These giraffe are stunning, I agree with you. And in terms of what's happening with that calf, I had thought that a giraffe continued to suckle for longer than simply 3 months, So yes, I would say that that calf is still suckling, although it has started eating solid food as well. Much like we see with the impala and the wildebeest, they start eating solid food at a very young age, but they still continue to supplement with their mother's milk. And in terms of whether the male will prevent that calf from feeding, I think so. Honestly, I have to admit, I think that there is a good chance that he might be possessive over her. I'm trying to speak and double check something quickly. But I can't find any information here about how quickly they come back into estrus. No, they do continue to lactate. Sorry, Monique, I'm looking things up just to double check, because as far as I knew, they continued to lactate for at least 6 months, and that is correct. They begin ruminating between 3 and 4 months and weaned as yearlings. So actually it's longer than I thought. She will stop lactating when that calf is a year old. Interesting. So yes, I think there's a chance, although she's managed to escape him now. She's actually moved off. So although he might be slightly possessive over the female, head up, he realized he's lost her. You can see it in his body posture. Where'd she go? Keeping a close eye on her. I think that calf would still manage in moments like this to actually have access to its mother. Okay. He's decided that guari bush is more appealing than a disinterested female. This has been really interesting to observe, though. Okay, well, I think I'm going to leave this little family group and continue on my search to see if I can't work out where exactly it is that Mr. Tingana's gone wandering off to. Fortunately, the immobilizer on Rusty has a fairly long waiting period before it switches on. Our regular viewers will know that magically, somehow, if we are broadcasting from Rusty, it acts as a jamming device for anything, including itself, within a sort of, I would say, about a 20-meter radius or so. Quite impressive. None of us know exactly how that works. It's just something we have accepted at this point. Do you know, VM, how this all works as a jamming device? I mean, I know it's complex, but I don't understand how it happens.
Well, I can think a lot of people that want to get a hold of this to steal some cars.
That's a very good point. We could make very good livings as breaking into cars. If all else fails, we'll take Rusty off to parking lots and jam people's car locks and immobilizers. We obviously won't do that. I'm only joking. It's one of those entertaining things, and something that James has used to his advantage before. He's come up to me before on quarantine because Jigga's immobilizer turns on far faster than Rusty's, and he's actually jammed my immobilizer and prevented me from being able to move. When I tried to do it in revenge, I didn't wait long enough, and so he caught on. So actually, I still owe James for that. Now tonight's my last opportunity. Perhaps I should find him now while he's changing his tire and park behind a bush, so that as soon as he's changed his tire, he can't understand why his vehicle won't start. That would be probably bordering on cool at this point. grey duiker, the common duiker. We magically managed to capture our moments with it, but it's dashed off. It's so particularly windy this afternoon, which is why I'm actually quite grateful that those giraffes stuck around. Very good question. Coming from Robin. So let's lump giraffe in with the antelope species because the process is similar, the thinking is similar. Robin has asked, why do some female antelope species have horns whilst others don't? And Robin, nobody knows for absolute certain, but there is a very, very strong correlation between females having horns and the habitat that that particular species lives in. So horns are for two things. One is reproductive success, so being able to compete with another male. The other is defense. For animals that live in really, really thick, dense vegetation, something like a bushbuck, a nyala, a kudu, even impala tends to favor the denser areas. They rely more on the defense of their environment than physically fighting back. But the males still need the horns because it's a reproductive advantage, so that it allows them to compete for access to the females. So that's why things like impala and nyala, females don't have horns, because actually, particularly if you look at the horns of a big male kudu, you can really imagine how that's going to work to your disadvantage. Having to run through the bush with your head flat back so that your horns are touching the back of you cannot be, found a tree, cannot be all that comfortable for them. But they need them to compete with other males. For animals like antelope species like wildebeest, oryx, gemsbok, creatures that live more in the outside open spaces, the females have horns so that they can defend themselves and their youngsters. They rely less on their camouflage and dense environment to throw off predators. And certainly a lot of antelope species, for example, sable and gemsbok in the more arid areas, the more open areas, will fight incredibly fiercely to protect their young. And I've seen gemsbok before. They've got quite those spear-like horns on the top of their heads can actually be fairly terrifying. So that's basically the reason behind it. There's also a bit of a theory that animals in open areas, it becomes harder to distinguish sub-adult males from females, so the adult males are less likely to kick them out of the herd, or at least they'll be able to stay within the comfort of the herd longer, because the males don't see that they are don't see them as competing males. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that animals know, obviously they know from scent, but that's one of the theories that's been put forward. But it is an interesting point. Giraffe as well. The females have those ossicones, but they are largely far more reliant on kicking rather than using them as a defensive strategy. Chosen a popular route today. Pulled over for Aubrey. Aubrey's pulled over for me, and we are stuck in a truce of politeness. How's it? Hi guys. How's it all? Tell you.
Where do we find what you're filming?
You can have a look on WildSafariLive.com.
WildSafariLive.com.
Yeah, you can have a look at that. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good.
Nice and cool.
Nice and cool today. Not like yesterday.
Yeah, sure. It was really good.
Yo.
Yeah, I'll check Grouse Dam, that area.
Okay, shop. I'm gonna go. Have you come from Zoe's?
I'm only come from Impala Play.
Okay, cool. Alright, I'm gonna go check up Zoe's. Okay. Cheers guys. Enjoy. A little bit of marketing there as well. Keo must be, it's a new name to me, certainly. So welcome to our sunset safari, Keo. Keo, no, we don't have any tigers out here. We are in Africa, and we are in the southern part of Africa. So our apex predator in this area is the lion. We do have lions out here. We have lions, we have leopards, we have cheetah, but we do not have tigers around in this particular area. So if you want to have a look at the map, you can Google Djuma, and you can have, and Djuma is spelled D-J-U-M-A, just to give you a little bit of a hint. And we are within the Sabi Sands area of South Africa. So no tigers here. If there is a tiger here, it is very lost. It does occasionally happen. People keeping exotic pets that then escape and go wandering about, but not often. I certainly would be very surprised to see a tiger. I think the wildebeest would be as well. You might have a very... It would be awesome. It would be awesome. I'll grant you that. It would definitely be the highlight of the day. But no tigers here. They are more in the Asiatic areas. It'd be fascinating. I mean, I wish that I knew a bit more about tigers, actually. We passed Aubrey just now, and Wayne said that he would not like to be the guy on the front of the vehicle sitting on the seat in the bonnet. So that guy is the tracker, and it's his job to sit up front and make sure that he spots tracks before Aubrey drives over them. I mean, Aubrey can spot them from the seat just like we can, and he's very good at it, but having somebody up front definitely helps. And the animals within the Sabi Sands are incredibly used to people sitting on the front of the seat. Yes, it is a slightly more exposed area, but for the most part, the animals are so used to it they don't even notice that particular person. And obviously, he's trained in the way that he responds in a sighting. If he were to move into an animal sighting and wave his arms around and not sit still, it might be a bigger problem than it is, because he knows to just sit quietly and still. And actually, speaking from having sat on the... Oh, something just blew straight into my eye, sorry. Speaking from the experience of having sat regularly in on tracker seats, it's actually a wonderful experience. I really enjoy sitting up front and just... It's peaceful somehow, because you're quite cut off from the rest of the vehicle, so you can just enjoy being out in front and looking. Not dangerous at all. In certain areas, in certain reserves, not ones as established as, for example, the Sabi Sands, or where the animals have been introduced and aren't quite as comfortable with the presence of a vehicle, the trackers will get off the front seat when they move into a big 5 sighting or a dangerous sighting. But that's not everybody's policy, it's just the policy in certain places. And of course that doesn't always work, because you don't always know when you're going to have a sighting. You can come around the corner and bump into anything, as I'm hoping we're going to do with Tingana. Tracker seat is also a great way to learn. We've all been through it in our guides training, sitting on the tracker seat helping track, and usually being tested by the driver on the various plant species that you're seeing, or some interesting aspect of the animal that you're watching. And bear in mind, of course, that we also spend a considerable time out on foot in the wild. This place is nothing's out to get you, nothing's out to kill you. It's really important to remember that. Yes, you have to be absolutely cautious. You cannot be blasé about it, and there are things out here with the ability to do you serious harm. But it is also important to remember that the city is exactly the same. The only thing I have a major problem with is ticks. But that's, I think, personally my own personal grudge. I don't know why, but they really like me. But yes, nothing's out here to harm you. And in fact, almost everything out here is far more afraid of human beings than human beings are afraid of them. With limited exceptions, and nighttime in the bush is very different. But it's not a place you need to come to and feel afraid or under threat ever. That being said, having said nothing's out to get you, it is the guide's responsibility to keep his or her guests completely safe. Hello, Rafi. Giraffe everywhere. I think this might be James's giraffe that he was looking at earlier. So as I said, it is the guide's responsibility to keep their guests safe. And because guests are not trained, in answer to James Taylor's question, no. To the best of my knowledge, it will depend on the policy of the landowner and the lodge itself. But as far as I know, I've never worked in an area where lodges have allowed guests to travel on the tracker seat. Just in case something does happen and they don't know how to respond. Shell, who's watching in Detroit. Shell, you were wondering whether or not they pay hazard pay to the tracker who's sitting on the front, or has the job of sitting on the front of the inimitable and, in my opinion, wonderful Brent Leo Smith when he's driving. Poor old Brent. He's earned something of a, I suppose, possibly deserved reputation. I'm not saying anything. I'm not commenting. Brent has very kindly offered to give me driving lessons after he rescued me where I planted the vehicle on a stump with both wheels in the air. Hazard pay is a good idea. I think it might be necessary. I could tell stories, but I'm not going to. I'll show a little bit of... I will say, Shell, that I have driven on the tracker seat with Brent driving. So I do trust him in that respect. He does, of course, have years' worth of very valuable experience. And I'll also tell you that he gave me considerable trouble when I missed leopard tracks. Pamela, I'm going to get to your question in a moment, but before I do, just to finish off with Robin's question, we've got this magnificent male kudu here, and you can see how those horns in this particular environment could well be a considerable disadvantage. It does happen that they get trapped in vegetation, and they do have to run away with their heads backwards or resting the horns against their shoulders. Hey buddy, that was very inconsiderate of you. Walked straight behind a tree. Although I suppose a good demonstration of their preference of habitat. And that the way that they have to run through the bush is actually led to a local belief that kudu have holes in the top of their horns and in top of their holes in their eye sockets, so that when they're running away, if they put their head back like that, they can look up through their horns at the predator chasing them. This is not true. If any of you have ever heard that story before, it is not the case. They cannot look through the tops of their skulls, through the horns, and at a predator behind them. Nice group of kudu. There's another one coming from our right here. Looks like could be Zeus. His head's sideways, so I can't tell if his horns are widespread or not. No, not quite. Beautiful. There is nothing more stately and graceful than a big male kudu. Just look at the size of his neck and the power within that. Beautiful boys. There, you can see what I mean, tilting that head back. You can imagine having to run full pace. And I'm sure there was an Aesop's fable about the stag running away from a lion or something along those lines. The vain stag that was constantly admiring his beautiful horns and decrying the thin state of his legs, and went dashing away to escape a lion and got trapped in the foliage by his antlers.
Like the walking backpack.
It's exactly what it's like. The wildebeest has hit the nail on the head. It is like walking with that backpack. So in order to broadcast our live walks, the cameramen first of all become pack mules, and second of all have an antenna that extends far above their head and bobs about, and occasionally, ever so occasionally, the presenters get very caught up. I say occasionally, I'm sure wildebeest disagrees ever so slightly. So the presenters might get a bit caught up in what they're doing and forget that the poor cameraman has to wander behind them, and they have to bend double at the waist in order to sort of lance their way through the bushes. It must be very difficult, and we have to express, of course, our full admiration for the wonderful job that the cameramen do, not only in that, but most importantly in putting up with us. Right. Pamela, just to answer your question quickly, in terms of what happens if there is a tracker on the seat and you come around the corner and there's an elephant, or the elephant comes close, very important that they are trained to know how to respond, and that they sit very still, very comfortably, and not make any sudden movements that could startle the animal. And that's why generally lodges have a policy that they don't put their guests on the tracker seat, just to avoid the situation of, for example, a guest panicking and causing any kind of increase in danger in that sighting. Okay, well, it seems as though Mr. Henry has finally managed to change his tyre. He's done exceptionally well in doing so. Let's head across to him and find out how he is.
Well, everybody, we have had the most exciting time, and then it would turn into a rather disappointing time. It was firstly disappointing because we found that our right back tyre was flat, and we have now had to fix that. The spare doesn't look a great deal better, but we should be okay for the duration of the drive. Then, of course, we had some wild dog tracks, very exciting on Arathusa airstrip. Expected to find them flying down the strip, figuratively I mean, and devouring impala. Unfortunately, they have crossed into Shirley's, which is to the south of Simbambalai, at least south of Arathusa, and we cannot go there, and so that was very sad. Tibbs and I shed a little tear, and now we found you a steenbok. There's a little male steenbok. He's often here, this chap. So this is his little territory. And he will have a girlfriend somewhere around here, or wife, with whom he will stay in visual contact. But no, they won't hang around together because it just makes them that much more obvious. Aren't they lovely? And they're very territorial, and they mark their territories, and the most interesting thing I think about the steenbok is the fact that they bury their dung within their little territories. So they don't bury their dung outside of the territory or on the perimeter. They use it to mark, but inside they will bury their dung so that nobody knows where they are. No leopard may come along and think, I smell steenbok here. Isn't he sweet? He's what we call a concentrate feeder, so he'll be very selective about what he eats. Needs to keep his metabolism much higher So the metabolic rate of a steenbok versus something like a buffalo is exponentially higher per kilogram of flesh. So they need to eat much more energy-rich food in order to keep that metabolism going. That's because they lose heat that much faster than, say, a buffalo. The smaller you are, basically, the faster you'll lose heat and the faster you will gain heat. And chewing there, and a ruminant, just like a buffalo would be, so he does have to re-chew his food. And I say he's a he, of course, because he's got horns. 2 sharp little horns. Isn't he great? He's being very kind to let us watch him like this. They normally don't. But you'll notice that every so often he looks up to see whether we're still here or not, and to make sure that we're not sort of walking towards him teeth bared. So Eric in Virginia Beach, you want to know if any of the animals here mate for life. A few of them do. The jackal is the notable one. Jackal, blackback jackal mate for life. But when one of them dies, I think they get over it fairly quickly and move on. Steenbok will mate they're monogamous, so they'll quite possibly mate for life. Again, for the life of one of the partners. If one of them dies, they don't go into a state of mournful celibacy. They'll move on fairly quickly. Then I suppose you might call the wild dogs monogamous, in that the alpha pair is the only breeding pair within a pack. So yep, they may be monogamous for much of their lives too. So there are a few mammals that do. But interestingly, despite the monogamy that is exhibited by things like steenbok, the male plays absolutely no role in parenting in just about all cases, except for the wild dogs, for example. I suppose male jackals, actually, that's not true. Male jackals do play a role in parenting. They will help to feed the youngsters. Birds, of course, totally different story. Hello, Gracie. You're concerned, of course, that I'm going on holiday and I might leave Safari James. Now, for those of you who don't know Safari James is a small doll that I made the other day to go with Gracie's Safari Barbie, and it made him out of Buffelshoek Dam mud, and some Viam found some grass inflorescences for his hair, and we found some sticks and things to hold him together. Gracie, I'm not going to take him with me. He will be on my own here. I'm telling you what, I'm going to give him to Kirsty to look after, and she will keep him in her room and possibly put him on her pillow. And look, big bird, little Wahlberg's eagle. Just going down, looked like it was going to kill something. Let's go forward. So Gracie, absolutely, Safari Barbie not coming with me, but at least Safari James not coming with me, but we'll be fine here with Kirsty. So that looked like a little Wahlberg's eagle flying over there. I can see it there in the tree. I'm not sure what it saw. It was into that kind of diving posture. No, we're not going to see him. I did see a brief glimpse in the tree there, but I think to see him through the trees with the camera is going to be very difficult. Maybe from here. No. Yeah, you can actually see him in there. Tibbs, can you see him? You got him? If you go from where you are, that's the tree. There he is. Yeah, that's him there. So that's a Wahlberg's eagle. I think it's a Wahlberg's eagle. That's what it looked like from its flight path, and from the way that its tail was so narrow. But I'm afraid that's the best we're going to get from this sighting. And then the little dwarf mongoose, you might be able to hear going calling because they're alarming. Then there's a little flock of white-headed helmet shrikes there. You see them, Tibbs? There, jumping down onto the floor. There they go. A little flock of birds, and much like the wild dogs, which we were chatting about, they've got an alpha pair that will do most of the breeding, and the rest are youngsters from a previous generation who are helping out raise the new flock or the new bunch of fledglings, and then they'll move on and form their own flocks of little white-headed helmet shrikes. It used to be called a grey helmet shrike. I'm now, of course, absolutely paranoid about my bird name since wonderful question asking me about a bird called a white-backed puffback from Julia, and she said, well, I can't find a white-backed puffback. And then, of course, Kirsten pointed out that it is in fact a blackback puffback, and so I was very embarrassed. It is in fact a white-crested helmet shrike, not a white-headed helmet shrike. White-crested, thank you so much. More embarrassment, let's move on. So, not much in the way of tracks around here, but I'm just reveling in the coof of this breeze, and even if I do get a little bit goose pimply during the course of the afternoon, I shall not mind. Hello, Mary in Michigan, and thank you very much for your kind sentiments. You say you will miss me when I'm gone. Thank you, Mary. I shall miss being here, I'm sure. Maybe not for the first 2 days, but after that I shall. And you want to know what I'm going to be writing on leave? Another book, or perhaps some music? Hopefully a bit of music, but I am trying to work on another book. So that's what I'm going to be working on. But that will be in between lengthy swims in the sea. Hello, Dave. I'm laughing at your Twitter handle, Cheesy Cheetah. You want to know if there are any camels around. Dave? No camels here. There are camels in a few zoos around here, but no camels around this area. North Africa, around the Sahara, many, many thousands of miles from here. Camels, as far as I know, have never occurred south of the Sahara. So they're very much a desert species. And while you can find them in Namibia, but they've been imported. And they're used there for kind of novelty rides across the Namib Desert. But I think, Dave, you'll find that camels have never been found south of the Sahara Desert, the southern fringes of which are probably, what should we say, about 3,000 miles from where we are here, I think. Let's actually check that. That'd be interesting to know exactly how far, but it's a long, long, long way. So we're just checking around for tracks. Apparently there were tracks of Tingana in this area early this morning. I'm unconvinced. Hello, Lynn. Ooh. See, that is a white yellow bird. Probably an oriole. There it goes. Useful if I could get the car in gear. Seems to have flown off, I'm afraid, everyone. No, not going to see that, I'm afraid. Lynn, you want to know if we've seen that impala with a bad eye recently? I saw it 2 days ago. I think it was 2 days ago with Brian, and we were driving down Leadwood Road, and yeah, he was fine. Seemed to be fine. He's quite a long way from Treehouse Dam where he used to be, and I'm sure it was quite interesting, like I said then, to note how, I mean, in impala are almost impossible to differentiate from each other. They don't have spots like hyenas. They're not territorial. So to actually plot their movements is quite difficult. But with that one, it's obviously very easy, provided he doesn't get eaten by something. And yeah, he's doing okay. His eye is still fairly ghastly, and there's still mucus coming out of it, so that's not very attractive. But he seems to be okay. His condition is good, and he hasn't been eaten. Right, so my plan is going to be to check this area briefly. We were kind of here at the beginning of the drive, and so once we've looked through here, I think we'll head off to the far east. And by that, of course, I do not mean China, I mean Cheetah Cutline. We'll see if anything has crossed in. It is quite windy, like I say, my hat may blow off. But I am not complaining about the wind. Long may this cool breeze blow. Not so, Tibbs. Better than yesterday. Tibbs is nodding. Pamela in Ohio, this is an interesting one, and that I've been asked before, had the answer to, and subsequently forgotten. So you may have to help me. You want to know who the ugly five are. I think I know two of them. I think the wildebeest is the one. I think the marabou stork is another. Warthog. That was from the Final Control. I'd hate to claim that. A hyena, and what was the other one? A vulture. Okay, so we've got vulture. I think calling all vultures ugly is a bit rough. Wildebeest, warthog, marabou stork, and the hyena. Now, that's very unkind. I don't think wildebeest are ugly at all. Some hyenas are less attractive than others, fair enough, but one can hardly go to those dens and see the magnificence of those fluffy little things and call them ugly. Warthogs, I suppose warthogs fulfill the old definition of cute, which was ugly but intriguing. Yes, warthogs certainly are intriguing. Too ugly. Marabou stork is the only one in that group that I think, yes, is profoundly disgusting to look at. I feel nauseous when I see them. They're normally covered in muck. They defecate on their own legs to try and stay cool. They've got those scraggly little bits of hair. Yeah, no, not my favourite. But they fulfill a very important function out here. Yvonne, I agree with you. You're in Sweden, and please, everybody, do remember to tell us where you're from when you comment and talk to us. It's so nice to hear which parts of the world you're from. Yvonne, in Sweden, you sent through the answer for the ugly five, and you say they're all so ugly that they're gorgeous. I absolutely agree. Very good point. That one's not going to hide from me. Tibbsy, there's a yellow bird. It's a black-headed oriole in this sort of biggish tree there. You got him. Say when. You see him?
No, I don't see him.
Okay, I'm going to go forward so you can see the most green tree that we can see in front of us there. And I'll go past here. There he is. You'll see him there. You got him. That, everybody, is the black-headed oriole, and we so seldom see them because they are normally flying or deep in the thickness of the middle of a tree and calling beautifully, that lovely liquid call. Nothing like that. Fortunately, the tree's slightly in the way, but you can see why we hardly ever see them. They are normally deep in the middle of a tree. Two other kinds of orioles we get here. Both of them are probably even more beautiful than that one. One, the Eurasian golden oriole, and one, the African golden oriole, and basically they're like that, but without the black head. Just plain gorgeous gold, both of them. It's insect-eating bill. Right. Glad we saw him. Hello, Pam in Mississippi. Apparently you're a new viewer since Big Cat Week. That is most exciting. Thank you for taking the time to get hold of us. Pam, you want to know if we get hummingbirds here. Pam, we don't have hummingbirds. We have the evolutionary equivalent, which is called a sunbird. And if I show you a picture of one, you will think we have hummingbirds. So hummingbirds are found only in the New World, which is where you live, so in the Americas. But over here we have something similar called a sunbird. You can see them, very beautiful birds, lovely different colors. I'll show you the next page. Beautiful colors there. And so we get those birds here, and they also eat or drink the nectar of various flowers. They eat insects in the wintertime, and they're probably quite a lot larger than most of the hummingbirds. The smallest one is this little fellow here, the collared sunbird. And he's certainly much bigger than the bumblebee hummingbird. I mean, I think a bumblebee hummingbird is about as big as that. And that collared sunbird is probably about that big. That's not a scale drawing. Thank you. Nice, Pam. And nice to hear from you in Mississippi. Now, of course, in weather like this, quite often you find that animals are hiding because they struggle to hear anything in the way of predators coming their way. They struggle to smell because the wind is blowing strongly from one direction. So if predators were to come from the northwest, for example, today, the animals would struggle to smell them coming along the way. And so they tend to hide quite a lot to do the general game. Although we've had very nice general game sightings today. We had nice zebra, we've had nice wildebeest, pretty good impala, excellent steenbok. All right, let's... Now, Scott, I agree with you completely. You say the birds seem scarce at the moment. They do. They are scarce at the moment. The dawn chorus sounds like a winter dawn chorus, where it's not so much a chorus as an aria, with one or two extra bits floating in and out. Yeah, it's because of the water, lack of water. There just aren't the same number of things for the birds to eat, and so there just aren't that many of them around. Watch your tips. Ooh, that was close. And he took his ear off with the ziziphus. I was lucky. So, yeah, very many fewer birds. For example, I mean, I remember this time of the year running along the Sand River down at Londolozi at this time of the year. Red-chested cuckoos going crazy, Diederik's cuckoos calling and shouting all over the place, and lots of other birds going really mad. Now, you get in the morning, you come out, you might hear the odd grey-headed sparrow, one or two franklins call, even they're not as enthusiastic as they might be. The ringneck doves, you will hear them as soon as the sun kind of pops up, they'll call, then the old robin, but there's no kind of explosion of sound that you'd normally get at this time of the year. So, Scott, I agree, and that's purely to do with the drought. Not many insects around, so the insect eaters aren't eating a lot. I think you'll find that a lot of the chicks that were born, I'm not sure how many of them would have survived to fledge. So, tough times. But, as I keep saying, completely understandable, completely normal. This area has survived millennia of drought and flood and all manner of other things. It's a very ancient soil, this not very nutrient rich, and that's because it's so old.